Hi guys and gals, Shane Stevenson, Director of Museum Collections Curator here at the Buffalo Naval Park. And for tonight's video, it's going to be a little esoteric, but we've done these before, alright, doing a comparison. This is something that Tim Nesmith and I at the Kid were going to do, but now that Tim Nesmith is kind of busy with the dry docking stuff, I figured I'd kind of pick it up. But of course, this would be better in a comparison video with the Kid itself. And I am standing on the aft superstructure on the 01 level. Of course, during 1945 and World War II service, there would have been on top a 40mm Bofor. In 1954, if you've watched our other videos, in 1954, we get the 3-inch 50, and they redesign this aft deckhouse on the 01 level. Right? And of course, Mount 53 comes off. So, with schematics from a book, The Anatomy of the Ship by Alan Raven, about the Sullivans specifically, I'm going to do a comparison, right, as best I can with what we have. Okay, so if we start off, so this is where Mount 53 would have been. Of course, you'd have the crane and the davit. You'd have the quintuple torpedo tubes, right? And you'd have that little catwalk, right? And then here would have been Mount 53. You know, the barrel coming out over a little bit. Certainly the size of the mount itself. And then up top here would have been the 40mm, and then carrying on with Mount 54 and Mount 55 here and there. All right, and there's Andrew. Say hello. So let's take a look at what that looks like in this Anatomy of the Ship booklet. So, here is the, say, 02 level with the mount and platform for the Bofor. You come down here, there's Mount 53, there's Mount 54, and you can tell the deckhouse is pretty tiny. Right, this was the machine gun radar room, passing information to all of the short AA platforms on board, the 20mm, 40mm. Then you had the 40mm ready service room, and here you had the fan room and a gun crew shelter. Right, so if we were to take a walk back there, aft, if this didn't change, here would be like the actual mount, and that little walkway would be right here to go from port and starboard. Which means then this gun probably would have come about to here. Again, with a little walkway here. So this is again 1945. 1954 comes, and now you can see with Mount 53 gone, they were able to extend the deckhouse on the 01 level. First off, let's take a look again at that 02. Look at the size difference from the 40mm to the 3-inch 50. And as we talked about with Tim, again from the Kid, that probably meant that they had to expand out the deckhouse to help support that extra weight. Now they used the base ring mount, right, the base ring of the 40mm, but it was still a lot heavier than the Bofors for the 3-inch 50. So comparing the deck house, you can see that there's these little cutouts here and there, and you can see how much more expanded they are out. There and there. But we know that Mount 54 didn't move. So, where the electrical shop is, was probably the base ring for Mount 53. Then they expanded it out, and now what we have is this L-shaped room, which is now for the 3-inch 50 handling room. You had an Amplidyne room where the machine gun radar room was, and again, still the fan room here, which they seem to cut. So my line here is a dash line where potentially the original fan room went, and then I also did a dash line here because this is where I imagine that the deck house in 1945 ended. Now, this little dot represents me. I just came into the 3-inch 50 handling room and the ready service room, and I'm standing right outside, or I'm crouching right outside the door. So, in 1945, I would have more than likely been outside. I know it's a little dark. Oh, it's picking up some good light. Okay, so here's the hoist. That did shift. Alright, I did a video about that when I'm standing in the shower, alright, in the aft deck house head. Alright, so that did shift a little bit. And that was for the 40mm and the 3-inch 50. And then as you can see here, we do have plenty of examples of 3-inch 50 projectiles. But I'm thinking that this bulkhead right here would have been the outside bulkhead for the 1945 deck house. So you would have had the 40mm here, and then through this bulkhead now would have been the machine gun radar room. All right, again, for all the small AA on board. Now they did show that they cut the fan room a little bit, and I'm sure that image is not to scale, but they couldn't have cut it that much because the hoist is still here. So, going back, I drew a little dot where the hoist potentially is now, right there. But you can see they cut out a little bit, and that's again represented to me by the dash line there. So you can see it's a solid structure here with a door. So is that the hoist now in the 1945 configuration? All right, obviously there's no evidence of the door anymore. I can only, maybe they did expand this out or shrink it a little bit, and again, not to scale potentially in these images. So, they have to increase the size of the O2 aft platform, right, to go from the Bofors to the 3-inch 50. They now expand the deck houses, right, and just the walkways and not really passageways, but the weather decks outside to accommodate that extra weight. But this potentially looks very the same, except now it's expanded out because the gun mount is not there anymore. So now, if I was to erase these, again, that's where I'm right now. If I was to erase these, that's the L-shaped room, all right, the ready service room for the 3-inch 50s. This number 11 is here similar to the number 9, all right. 9 is radar, 11 is Amplidyne, and we'll take a walk over there. Alright. So here's Mount 54. you can see there's just a little bit of space between the fan, right, and the back. So I can imagine the back of Mount 54. So I can imagine this was probably how much space was there in the front. All right, now we're getting to the Ampledyne room. All right, this is where our canvases are for the quarterdeck of the Sullivans. All right, so just ignore that. And the Ampledyne room would have, Ampledyne is a technology that's just not around anymore, but it would have amplified the current electrical, the electrical current. All right, so a good example is what they would have is they'd have sensors to say, the gun mount is in this position, I now need it to be in this position, and so the Ampledynes and the DC generator would then give it that extra boost of power to get it rotating from one sensor to the other. So it wasn't a constant stream of current, but it amplified the current there for, especially for movement of the 3-inch 50. All right, so there are motors, DC motors, and the generators. So the Ampledyne room would have given it that extra boost of power. Again, not changing the current, but adding to the current to get the gun mount moving from one position to another. And again, back in World War II and 43 to 45, that would have been roughly the area of the radar room. So this could be, again, up forward, you know, the barrel probably coming out here. All of this was not here. And I can imagine, I would imagine probably to about here. Would have been all exposed and outside. So no electrical workshop. Right? Obviously no gun director for the 3-inch. And that would have really shrank that space that I was in. So electrical workshop, all outside, and coming back in, again, this is where I'm at right now. This is the dash lines, kind of represent to me the 45 Deckhouse, and that little dot would be the hoist. And so in this image, I'm probably standing right around here, if this was 1943 to 1945. I think. Right, we can't know for sure unless we got very accurate measurements. When the kid comes back from dry dock, I got to get down there, and we can take measurements from, say, the center line of Mount 54 and see where their deckhouse ends. Then I can use those measurements and calculate it out. Oh, wouldn't that actually be pretty fun? Yeah, I think that would be pretty fun. So, well, maybe I got to head down to Louisiana sometime over the next year, and Tim and I can work on measuring that out, and we can get a really accurate picture. Of course, you could just go down to the kid, as I would recommend you do, and see that, and then come up here and compare all of these changes through our Cold War service that the kid did not have configured on her. But I think it would be very cool to then actually measure it out and put marks either on the deck with a sign or something to say, in 1945, this is what it would have looked like. So, doesn't mean I'm right, but I can imagine this wall would have extended, this bulkhead would have extended, and that would have been the outside bulkhead or edge of the deckhouse. All of this would have been outside leading to the gun mount. The back of the gun mount probably somewhere through that bulkhead there. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little look. I love these sorts of things. I hope you do too. And, you know, thanks for your support. Leave comments. If you liked this video, give us a thumbs up. If you really liked it, subscribe. And we will see you again soon, everybody. And thanks for all of your continued support.